Well, hello, lovely humans, and welcome back to my channel. Before we get started into the meat of today's video, wanted to say a little something. If you enjoy content here on this channel, on our happy little wedding planning corner of the internet, one way that you could give back, if you so choose to, that would really help support me and my channel is to do just one simple thing. If you ever feel so inclined, let the ads play. Because that is actually how I make a bulk of my income, and that actually directly supports me and my family. It's beautiful that this has become such a wonderful element of my life, and I know of your lives as well, and this is actually now our family's main source of income, which is crazy to say out loud, and I am so grateful for it. But if you ever feel so inclined, if you just want to be like, you know what, I'm doing my hair, I'm doing my makeup, I'm doing laundry in the background, just feel free to maybe let some of those ads play, and it will directly affect me and my life and help me to continue to create fun little snippety tidbits like this every single week for you guys. So now in today's video, we're going to talk about things you should absolutely skip if you're on a budget. Okay, I'm gonna do my best to talk about tips that I have not talked about in other videos, but we might get a teensy bit of crossover. And if you can tell that there's a little bit of crossover, well then that means that you're just a really, really good student, you know? Like, so thank you for being such a good student of my channel. Without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. Of course, this is just a big fat generic list. I could say something on this list and you might respond with, you know, I don't feel like I could skip that. That's okay. You're allowed to disagree with the strange blonde lady on the internet. Totally fine. But for those of you who are on a budget and you're looking to save costs, oftentimes I know, because I was a budget bride and I work with so many budget brides, that they feel like they have to do certain things. And I'm here to release you of that stress or that obligation. The first area that I recommend that you cut back just a little bit, just a teensy tiny wee bit, would be florals. The first area would be ceremony decor. Sure, go for that big arbor piece. See if you could repurpose it for your sweetheart table, because there's a huge cost savings there, but maybe potentially don't do anything on the aisle and don't do any chair swag pieces. And that's the little pieces that hang off the sides or the backs of the chairs to add a little bit more texture. You don't need them. A lot of people aren't going to pay any attention to them. And will they make for beautiful photos? Yes, but if you're just doing it for the photos and you don't have a big budget, maybe you can find a way to splurge in another area that will really enhance your photography experience. Another area of florals that you can cut would be any sort of personal items that is not a bouquet or boutonniere. Corsages and headpieces, like crowns, floral crowns, are not necessarily difficult to make, but have to be made at the last minute and therefore are more expensive because they have no consistent water source. So if you want a beautiful floral pin or floral crown, know that that is being made at the very, very last minute by your florist while he or she has been scrambling to kind of put together everything else for you, and they're going to have a higher price tag. Corsages, wristlets do not have a water source, so that is why sometimes their cost is more expensive. So if you're looking at a more limited budget, I suggest cutting out some of those things, especially because those florals don't tend to last super well without a water source anyhow, so about halfway through the day, they're not gonna be looking as fresh and as cute as they did when the florist first dropped them off. So you have to kind of really figure out if it's worth it to you. Another area that I recommend that you cut is specialty lighting. And that is uplights, that is string lights, that is a monogram of your names, unless they're already included with your DJ package or with your venue package. Those add up very quickly. Now, do I think that they're beautiful and add so much ambiance to a space? Absolutely. Did I have string lights at my wedding? Yes. Yes, I did. But the cost of getting lights installed, the cheapest installation I've ever seen for the cafe bulbs is $900. And that's the cheapest installation I've ever seen. Most of them are much more than that. Uplights also can be very, very expensive to add on, so feel free to skip those if you're working on a budget. Dance floor. I've had so many couples be like, wait a minute, don't we need a dance floor? The only reason you would need a dance floor, the only reason, is if your dance floor space is on grass and women will be wearing heels. I can see merits to dance floors in other locations. Skip it. If you have a cement pad, that is perfect. You do not need to splurge on any form of dance floor at all whatsoever. Transportation. Hiring a car service to transport you and your bridal party from point A to point B can be very expensive, Not because their hourly rate is really high, but most places have an hour minimum. So sometimes it's you can't rent a car for less than 2 hours, or you can't rent a shuttle for less than 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever that happens to be. And if what you're thinking is, well, all I need to do is get people from the hotel to the wedding venue, that's a whole video for another time, like my opinion on shuttles and whatnot. But that is a huge cost, especially when we're in the day and age of Uber and Lyft and other sort of ride-sharing apps where guests are pretty capable of getting themselves from the hotel to your wedding site. In fact, I had this conversation with a couple recently where they're like, yeah, we think we might need to hire a shuttle to get them from this location to this location. And I was like, actually, I given the parameters, what we got going on here, I think you could actually end up saving here and not hiring for professional service to handle that, because the logistics that come with a shuttle bus and 80 guests is a lot. So I would just encourage your guests to Uber and or Lyft instead. Wedding shoes. This is like a very polarizing one for a lot of people. I know it is. But I'm going to be honest, the only time that your shoes are seen are in the detail photos. Like, other than that, no one else knows what is on your feet. So if you are not specifically partial to having elegant footwear, I would suggest going for a cheaper alternative. Heck, I'm a sucker for sneakers. I love it when a bride wears sneakers, because I know as her wedding planner, like when I run up to her halfway through the night, I'm like, how are your feet? She's gonna be like, oh, they're fine. I'm wearing sneakers. As opposed to if you're wearing 4-inch stilettos and you're like, I'm kind of dying. Can you bring me my flats? And then you're paying for 2 different pairs of shoes. So cut back a little bit on the shoe expenditures and save your feet. They will thank you. Here's another one that might be seen as a teensy bit controversial, okay? Lawn games. Look, if someone is offering to let you borrow lawn games and they're gonna bring them and set them up and tear them down and take them away, there's no problem, okay? Even if they're gonna let you borrow them and you have a setup and tear down crew, cool. But if you're going out of your way to spend $100 on renting cornhole, I can tell you from behind the scenes and from having worked a myriad of events, a lot of times it's a select few people that will like camp out next to the cornhole, but for a majority of the evening, it doesn't get touched. So if you're thinking about giant Jenga, the cost that comes along with renting them or buying those things, it's really, in my opinion, as someone who watches them go unused, the cost-benefit ratio really, there's not a high benefit to it. So if you're on the fence and you're working on a budget, cut out the lawn games. In that same thread, so most of you, I mean, all of you probably know that I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. And a lot of times couples will say something along the lines of, well, what do we do about the kids? Do we have an activity table or a room with kids stuff that the kids can go enjoy, or like extra things to entertain them during the ceremony or during the reception? And I can remember distinctly there was this one wedding where there was like an entire extra table that we rented, linen. The bride went all out and got crayons and markers and coloring pages and activity things for the children to use. And I saw 2 kids using it the whole night, and they were only there for a small portion of time. It is an added expenditure that sounds like a great thing to offer, but in actuality is not really used to its fullest potential. And for the most part, like me as a parent, those kinds of tables stress me out because I don't want to go sit at a coloring table with my kids when I could be boogieing with them on the dance floor. So for me, both as a parent and as a wedding planner, doing this for a living, I don't see the benefit of having a full-on kids activity center. If you feel like you want to do something, that's totally fine. But again, we're talking about things to cut if you're on a budget. And that is one of the things that I highly suggest you go ahead and kick to the curb lovingly. Like, bye, you were a great thought, but I don't need you anymore. I think I mentioned this in another video, but it's worth mentioning again here. Champagne toasts. There is a bunch of champagne that gets wasted with a champagne toast because a lot of people don't like drinking it. There is also a bunch left over, and you need to have staff people available to pour the champagne, whether on trays and then to bring it out, or in the individual glasses at everybody's seats. And you have to rent an additional champagne glass. So when you're thinking about all the steps of this, you have to buy a specific type of alcohol, champagne. You have to rent more glassware, and you have to hire more people to serve it. So it ends up being a really big cost. And in the end, there's a bunch of champs that's wasted, which is blasphemous in my opinion, because good champs deserves to be treasured like the little princess that it is. 90% positive I mentioned this in another video, but we're going to do it again. Paper. Any sort of paper, individual papers at people's seats. Programs, menus. You don't need them. If you feel like you have to have one, then maybe do one large sign that everyone can read, but you don't need one at everybody's seat. In addition to that, save the dates. Save the dates are 100% a fad. They are cool. They are fun. I did them for my wedding. I absolutely loved creating them for my wedding. This is not me saying that I hate save the dates, but you do not need to have them. Weddings have existed for a very long time without save the dates. So if you want to cut back on some costs, I would consider either sending out a digital one or cutting it all together and simply sending out your invitations a little bit earlier. So you still give people plenty of time to get off work. They know that your wedding's coming up, but you don't have to spend more on more paper and more postage and more brain space because you're working on a budget and you gotta find something to cut. And then last, but most certainly not least, y'all know this is coming, all right? You know this was coming. Favors. Cut them. Please cut favors if you're on a budget, because even if they are $2 a piece, which is relatively inexpensive for a favor, and you have 100 guests, that's $200. You could probably get 2 extra floral centerpieces with $200, of course, depending on the cost of your florist. Or you could invite 2 extra people instead of having favors if it's $100 a head. Like, so you could, $200 sounds so small, but when you add it up with all these other things that we've been talking about, or just kind of break it down and look at it from that perspective, then it kind of is a little bit more sobering, you know? So, yes, again, here's Jamie Wolver talking about favors and telling you to skip them, but that's just because I believe so ardently in the fact that you don't need them. Because I see so many that are left behind, I see so many that are forgotten, and I have not heard a single guest leaving a wedding ever be like, where were the favors? Ugh, mad. Quick little addendum. This is very culturally specific. I'm aware of that. If you live in a place where people tell you that you have to have favors, or your culture tells you that you have to have favors, otherwise there will be a riot, then disregard that point. If you are a bride or groom balling on a budget, consider cutting these things, because no one's gonna know that they're missing. No one's gonna know that you thought about getting lawn games and then decided not to do them. No one's gonna show up with their kids to your event and be like, there's no activity table. The nerve of these people, because most people don't do them. A majority of the events I work don't have a majority of these things I listed. Seriously, even the non-budget ones don't have a lot of these things. So don't feel beholden to any sort of traditions or ideals that are going to force you to go out of budget, because that, in my opinion, is not fair to you guys. You deserve to have the wedding day of your dreams and spend money where you feel like you should spend money. And it doesn't have to be on any of these things. That's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't done so already, like this video and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And again, if you feel like doing this every once in a while, let some of those ads play. Little extra boost of support for this channel. I mean, I'll be immensely grateful if you wanted to do that. Okay, cool. And until next week, bye guys.